Hello and welcome back to the Thursday NFL DFS slate breakdown. We're breaking down the Seattle Seahawks at Chicago Bears on Thursday Night Football. We're going to be going through this slate. Thank you guys for joining us again. Happy holidays. Hope you guys had a great Christmas. And we are back with a nice slate. I'm your host, Tyler Weeman, at FlatTyler83 on your DFS sites and Twitter. Now come join us at LineStar. $39.99 per month gets you access to all we do, all the props, all the DFS. You get it all at one low price. Now let's jump into this slate and break it down quickly and go through position by position. 42.5 game total, Chicago's 4-point underdogs, and weather in Chicago looks like it's going to be off and on, kind of rainy, cold, mid-40s, slight breeze. I don't see a huge effect from the weather, but there could be some, intermittent showers throughout the game. Now, let's jump in. We got Geno Smith and Caleb Williams. Clearly best matchup for the quarterback is Caleb Williams. The wide receivers have better matchups also, and so it's a much better spot for Caleb than it is for Geno. I don't mind going to Caleb. He also has some solid upside. We've seen, 25 plus, 5 times now this season, which really isn't too bad out of a guy, when we played, 15 weeks so far or so. I like my odds there. He has some solid upside because of his legs and has really good weapons. With Seattle being a, worse secondary, I do like some Caleb stacks tonight. And I'm surprised that we have him going 40% owned while we have Geno being at 67. Now on to Geno. I don't mind going to some Geno. The Bears have let it up a little bit over the last 4, but they've also played some better offenses over those last 4. So not too surprised by that. But all in all, this defense has been very, very solid through the air all season long. I don't love going against Geno or with Geno in a spot where it is likely they're able to run the ball a bit as well. However, with Zach Charbonnet back there, not Kenneth Walker, Geno does have a little more upside because there is some upside through the air to Charbonnet as well as the other receivers. So, little interested in Geno, but I do prefer Caleb out of the two. Now, getting over to the running back spot. Charbonnet has the clear advantage on our team defense tool. Chicago's 27th versus RB1, Seattle 10th. So DeAndre Swift in a much worse matchup here. He's also getting more ownership, which I would expect that to flip throughout the day here, as Charbonnet is only 800 more. We have him projected for way more. The consensus projections have Charbonnet as way more. I think he does become the high-owned running back on this slate. Now, breaking down this spot, Kenny McIntosh really hasn't played much at all when Charbonnet has got the starts. Charbonnet has literally been playing 85-90% of the snaps when Kenneth Walker is out. So I expect a super high dose of Charbonnet, and McIntosh really doesn't have, that much interest to me in this situation. I would probably be pretty strong on Charbonnet. Now on to the Bears side. We got DeAndre Swift and Roschon Johnson. There is a little bit of a nuance to this situation. Prior to Roschon Johnson getting a concussion, sitting out 2 days or 2 games, then coming back. Last game, he only played 22% of the snaps. But prior to that concussion, he was playing 45% of the snaps. So the big question here is, did the Bears change their philosophy again and go just to DeAndre Swift heavy as he is the true RB1? Or was it a situation where let's ease Roschon back into the game, play him a little bit this first game, then start ramping him up? If that's the case, Roschon Johnson at 2,600 is very interesting. If he plays 40% of the snaps, 40 plus, there's a nice little floor, a solid ceiling. Swift hasn't been the best in short yardage, situations. So what that means is Roschon can definitely vulture a touchdown or two. So I do think Roschon is very interesting, but you got to kind of look into the situation a little bit. You have to realize the risk of taking Roschon. He could go play 20%. And if he does, I don't want a part of him, but he could play 40, 45%. If he plays that upper tier, he is a great pick at low ownership right now. DeAndre Swift is in, the same situation. If Roschon plays a little, plays 20%, Swift is the clear-cut number one and looks like a great answer. And his projection is probably then low on both our site and on consensus projections. But there is the chance he's only out there 55, 60%. And if he's only out there 55, 60%, then he's probably slightly overpriced for a tough matchup and not getting all the workload. So do with that information what you will, but I think it is an interesting little nuance of this slate. And this slate is an interesting one because there's really not a ton of ancillary guys we can use. Both these teams pretty much just run three receivers. They have one tight end, or Seattle, where they spread it to three. So there's not a ton of different guys we can really pick from that have true value in this slate, which may make it hard to get a little bit different here, and we got to take a couple little chances to do so. Getting over to the wide receiver spot, DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett, JSN run pretty much all the routes. Tyler Lockett's running 60, 70% of the routes. Jake Bobo is sprinkled in, 18 to 25% or so. So you can go Bobo, but very little upside. He's not going to get a ton of play. He gets a couple targets every game, but at 2K, he's a bit overpriced for those targets. So you really are relying on Metcalf, Lockett, JSN. Now, how to break these guys down is a little interesting here as well. So the wide receiver one in Seattle or versus Chicago has had a very tough matchup this season, while the wide receiver two has had a great matchup. Now, the situation here is if we're looking at DK Metcalf and JSN, it appears JSN is kind of the number one in Seattle now. He's averaging 8.4 targets per game this season, while DK Metcalf is 7.7. DK Metcalf still profiles more as a wide receiver one, though. Big, strong, fast, can get downfield, can do a lot of different stuff. He is their more deep target type guy, where JSN has moved a little bit more around the formation, goes out of the slot, goes here and there. But Chicago's been tough at against slot receivers. They've been tough against number one. So JSN is an interesting spot where we really want to target, or DK Metcalf as well, we really want to target the number two receiver in this offense, but it's really hard to know how Seattle is going to do that from game in and game out. I do like DK Metcalf a little bit. I do like JSN a little bit. I think whatever one, role takes more of that WR2 role in this game is the one we want, but it's very, very tough to exactly say which one of these guys is that role. DK Metcalf most likely plays a little bit more of the WR1, so I am a little more interested in JSN, but you got to pay up for JSN because he has been getting it done week in and week out, and he is expensive right now. Tyler Lockett at 3,200 is a little bit interesting. The one thing I want to point out about Lockett is his targets have just fallen off. Earlier in the season, he was getting, 4, 6, 7, 8 targets. And since week 11, pretty much since this OC change that's Chicago, the OC change. Since week 11 in Seattle, he's getting 1 to 3 targets per game. He's on the field 60-70%, but those targets just aren't going to him. Now, could this be a one-off game that it happens? Absolutely, but just understand the risk with that one. Now, let's get over to the Chicago receivers. We got Keenan Allen, DJ Moore, Rome Odunze. These three are pretty much running 100% of the routes. All three of them are on the field 90% or so, 90% plus. There's really no other ancillary receivers you can choose from the Bears. It is those three guys, and you pick and choose. DJ Moore obviously has the biggest ceiling. Keenan Allen has been the most consistent under this new OC. They keep getting it done, and he's had some giant games lately. So you got to like Keenan. Rome Odunze has some big upside, big play potential, but of these three, he gets the least amount of targets. So he is your, lower owned of those three receivers, but there is some high upside. Just the likelihood of that hitting is a little bit lower. Now, all three of these guys are in decent matchups, and I'm absolutely willing to mix and match any of them. Now, getting over to the tight end spot. So on the Bears side, it's pretty easy. Cole Kmet is on the field a ton, running a ton of the routes. He is the tight end you want on if you want a Bears tight end. He's been decent. He has some big upside. He's had a couple big games, but most likely outcome for him is, 6, 7, 8 points, something like that. Nothing that's really going to move the needle, but Seattle for years has been a little poor at protecting the tight end. If you look at our team defense tool, we have them over the last 10 games, however, 9th versus tight end. So Cole Kmet does have a little bit of a tough matchup. On the Seattle side, Noah Fant is the tight end one. He is on the field the most, but, and there's a big but here, A.J. Barner and Pharaoh Brown are both sprinkled in, both playing, 30, mid 30% snaps, and both get a couple targets a game. So all three Seattle tight ends are used a little bit, and tight ends just have a little higher likelihood of a goal line touchdown than a wide receiver does. So there's a little bit of interest, but Pharaoh Brown, A.J. Barner are touchdown or bust. A.J. Barner, getting 1 to 3 targets a game as the tight end 2, whereas Noah Fant is getting 5.3 per game over the last 4. So Noah Fant has the floor, he has the ceiling, but the other guys can be sprinkled in, can vulture a touchdown, and you can't forget about them, as there's very, very few people on this slate that are, playable outside of the stars on both teams. Now, getting into defense and kicker. So I'm interested in either defense, but I don't feel like either have a ton of upside. The one thing that's nice with the Seahawks D is Caleb Williams likes to hold on to the ball a lot, which helps sack potential, and then also forced sack fumbles or interceptions due to a hit while he's throwing the ball or something like that. So I do prefer the Seattle defense, even though they are away, but at least they are favorites, and I think Chicago will throw the ball a little bit more. They've been doing that all season, whereas Seattle will try to run the ball a little bit more, and the Chicago defense allows that to happen. Now, Chicago Bear D is solid. They have had some solid games this season, but I struggle to want to go there versus the Seahawks, who are generally pretty good taking care of the football. Getting over to your kicker. Jason Myers, Kyra Santos, both have the ability to get it done. Jason Myers is averaging 8.3 fantasy points per game, whereas Santos is only at 6.5. Santos really has not had many opportunities. He's hitting 82% of his field goal percentages, Fine to go there if you want, but I do prefer Jason Myers, who has been much more consistent and much better and only a little bit more expensive. So that would be my favorite kicker if I was going to play a kicker. Now, 27% owned or 16% owned for a kicker in a game total of 42 isn't the best value, but it's another way to get a little bit different. So I don't mind sprinkling some in my lineup. So that'll do it for us today, guys. Hope you guys have a great night. Good luck. And I will see you later today with more DFS and prop betting content. Peace.